Hello, BookTube. I want to have a conversation about fantasy. For most of my life, fantasy has been one of the most important. I don't quite know how to say this, and hopefully, this does not sound too pretentious, but I guess cultural aspects of my life. Some of my earliest memories are of watching He-Man and She-Ra and Thundar and any number of other cartoons and movies that were fantasy, like Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer and the Beastmaster and Red Sonja and Masters of the Universe and Clash of the Titans, so on and so forth. And of course, when I was in my mid-teens, about 15, I really got into adult fantasy and science fiction too, but I've always preferred fantasy over science fiction. And fantasy and science fiction were the my favorite genre from that point on till just a few years ago. Even as say for a little bit, classics, canonical, modern, and contemporary fiction, poetry, and drama were sort of alongside them, but then gradually it just became science fiction and fantasy, or fantasy, which I will be kind of going science fiction and fantasy and just fantasy through most of this probably, but I'm mostly talking about fantasy because it is my favorite of the two. But then December of 2019 happened. And it's weird because the first part of December 2019 was a great reading month for fantasy. I read books like I think I probably read The Bloodprint by Ausma Zehanat Khan and then The Black Khan. So one of the two. I don't remember if I read this one and then The Black Khan or just The Black Khan. It was one of the two. And I really enjoyed them. Although I think The Bloodprint's a bit better than The Black Khan, and generally the series seems to kind of but as each book goes on, although I've never read the fourth book. But anyway, I'll get to that in bed. But yeah, I really enjoyed The Bloodprint and The Black Khan. And I really enjoyed Hidden Sun by Jaine Fenn. And Lost Gods by Micah Yongo. Sorry, Yongo. I really enjoyed these three. Or four. And then the second part of December 2019 hit. And I could not get into Lines of Descent by Troy Carrol Bucher, or Fate of the Fallen by Kade. I could not get into them. And then as December 2019 rolled into January of 2020, it's like it snowballed. The bottom fell out. A switch was pulled. And even though I liked Hidden Sun, I could not get into Broken Shadow, the second book in the series, or Pale Kings by Micah Yongo, which is the sequel to Lost Gods. I could not get into them. And it's the same thing that happened with The Gutter Prayer by Gareth Hanrahan. I really enjoyed this when I read it earlier in 2019, but when I got around to The Shadow Saint, the sequel, I didn't like it. I don't know what happened, and I've been struggling trying to figure out what happened ever since. like is it just like, I mean, it's like when I describe it as a switch, I don't know, because I because I mean during this time, since 2020, I have really fallen in for history. My history collection has ballooned. Most of the history I've been reading, I've been absolutely loving and stuff. And I mean, is this a taste change, which I have had before? When I was younger, in my between like 11 to 14 or 15, I was really into mysteries. Not only Agatha Christie, but others like Earl Stanley Gardner, Mary Higgins Clark, Patricia Cornwell, Colin Dexter, Georges de Menon, and others. But then there was I fell out of it. And for about 5 to 7 years, I read no mysteries until I read The Hound of the Baskervilles and A Pocket Full of Rye for a class, and tried to get into A Murder is Announced and couldn't really do it. And then it was about 8 years ago, give or take, when I reread Death on the Nile after well over a decade and enjoyed it. And I got back into Agatha Christie, but I never really got back into mystery. So is this just a taste change that is a bit more radical and a bit more concerning, because fantasy has been for so long like such an important aspect of my reading and cultural life, and even still is, because I mean, while I'm still struggling with enjoying any or most of the fantasy I've been reading. It's like creatively, fantasy's still here. I'm constantly thinking of ideas for fantasy stories. And of course, during this time, I've also really fallen back in with manga. I mean, my manga collection has exploded. Well, I had none in 2019, and I've like well over 100 volumes now. So is it just my interest is shifting more towards graphic version of fantasy rather than strictly prose, or what? I don't know. But it's even like other works that I really enjoyed, like the other works I struggled with. Like I really enjoyed The Traitor God by Cameron Johnston, and I couldn't get into the Maleficent 7 by him. And I mean, it's not like it's completely none of the fantasy I've been reading has kind of worked. I mean, I did actually manage to read The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, although I'm I'm conflicted about this one though, and I finished and rather liked David Mogo Godhunter by Suyi Davies Okungbowa. So and I've reread some that I've gotten on with, like which I did not pull. Oh well. But I mean, like I've reread some that I've really enjoyed, so it's not a complete off switch. But then there are some that I've read and I know I've liked in the past that I'm not getting on with. Take, for example, Conan the Savage by Leonard Carpenter. This was one of the books I read when I was a teen and was really getting into adult fantasy for the first time. This is one of the Conan pastiche novels that Tor put out, and I read it last year for Garb August, or tried to, and I couldn't do it. I could not do it. And then also, more recently, read or tried to reread The Last Son by Katie Edwards. And I mean, this is a more recent read because I read it when it first came out in 2017, and then again in I think mid 2019 is when The Hanged Man came out, because I reread it then for that. And I enjoyed it both times, although more critical on the second read. But this third reread attempt, or second reread attempt, it would be third read, I couldn't get into it. I could not get into it. I could not get past the first few chapters. Even though I know I like it. It just, what is going on here? The same thing happened moving a bit to science fiction is Radiance by Catherynne and Valente. I read this in 2017 and loved it. It was one of my favorite books from 2017. And I reread it again and really enjoyed it that second reading. But then I had to go at it. I don't remember if it was last year or the year before. And I just couldn't get into it. It's so frustrating. And even older, more established works of fantasy, I'm having that issue with. I tried to read a year or two ago. I reread like the whole Conan of Robert E. Howard, and I didn't quite enjoy it as much as I have in the past. And I tried to reread The Return of the Sorcerer by Clark Ashton Smith, and I know I love most of the stories in this collection. I read them like when I first read them years ago. I loved pretty much all of the stories, and yet this reread it just I didn't, and I don't know why, and it's frustrating. And when I was originally thinking about doing this video last week, I was going to point out, okay, well, this is all about fantasy, contemporary fantasy, or fantasy in general, that started to annoy me. But I don't think it's that. I think it's just, for whatever reason, my interest, my enjoyment of fantasy has withered, except for in a few cases of works that I've really enjoyed, or I've enjoyed, like, that I really enjoy, but and a few exceptions, but I don't know, and I guess maybe it's all the more annoying and infuriating because, I mean, fantasy has been a part of my life for so long that I don't quite know what to do without it, or what to make of this sort of lack of interest and just constant bailing on it. I don't know. So I don't know. Maybe what I should do is just take a break from fantasy, although it's kind of hard because, again, creatively, which is, I guess, also part of it, is the struggle to read fantasy, but I still want to create fantasy. That conflict just, I guess, is adding to it too. But maybe as far as reading fantasy is concerned, except for manga, because I'm really enjoying that, is just to take a break, maybe just clear it out, and maybe don't worry about it, and at some point it'll come back. Maybe I'll reread something, or have a desire for something, and then it'll come back, and then I can maybe pick some more back up then, or something. I don't know. Hopefully this video has made some sense, because I'm still not entirely sure what I make of it. And I think sometimes when I want to do these videos, my goal is to try to work through my issues as I'm making these videos, and then come to a sort of a conclusion, either in the making of the video or as I'm working on sort of as much prep as I put into these videos, which honestly isn't much, but I'll sometimes kind of try to work through what I want to say in these discussion videos. Not that when they actually get down to making them, do they work, but sometimes they do. So anyway, I don't know what to make of this. So anyway, so I guess I'll go ahead and sign off for now. Hopefully this video will help, or I don't know. But anyway, I needed to get this out. I needed to kind of try to work through it. And I think as I've worked through it, as much as I've come to any conclusion, is that it's not so much the works themselves. Because more than likely, if whatever happened did not happen, I probably would have read and really enjoyed quite a number of the fantasy that I've bailed on over the last few years. But it's like whatever happened, and it's not really any sort of like world building annoyances that I have, or exhaustion with the standard narrative and standard genre conventions. It's just I'm just not really all that interested, and that interest has largely withered. So anyway, that's all I got for right now. I don't know if I'll leave like any mentions in the show notes for these books. I might do that as I'm loading up the video. So I don't think there'll be another video today. If there are tag videos tomorrow, I might do one. Or I might do another kind of discussion video where I try to hash out time and superhero stories, because that's something I'm going to be confronting in my writing project this month. And also, I might go ahead and start doing the unhaul videos, but just go ahead and put them up, but not necessarily actually send the books out until I have a confirmation of whether or not I'll have transportation to take them where I'm taking them to, or something. But anyway, BookTube, that's it for today. So thank you. Sorry if this video makes absolutely no sense, but regardless, have a great afternoon, and until I see you tomorrow, stay safe.